Welcome back, everybody, to the Moon Tower Business Podcast. Today, we're speaking to Mayor Steve Adler. Mayor Adler, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for the invite on.
Yes, sir. Thank you for coming on the podcast. We have several things I want to talk to you about today, but I thought we'd kick off maybe talk a little bit about what kind of things were you involved in professionally before being elected mayor in 2015?
I was a partner in a little boutique law firm that represented mostly landowners, tenants in eminent domain actions against the government, seeking either to stop takings or to seek appropriate and just compensation for a taking. I started out as a civil rights lawyer, doing employment discrimination work, sexual harassment in the workforce. And then Diane and I were pretty involved in nonprofits and boards, and that almost becomes a full-time job before I took this role as mayor.
Yes, sir. So you were elected in 2015. How have you seen the economy kind of evolve and grow since you took office?
Well, the economy in Austin, pandemic aside for a moment, has just been on fire. The fastest growing large metropolitan area in the country, many years here in a row. One of the lowest unemployment rates in the entire country. A very attractive place for relocations. And Austin was and is enjoying that position. So in so many ways, an economy that was firing on all cylinders. Again, putting aside for a moment the disproportionality and disparities associated with that success. Not something that was being felt by everyone in the community.
What do you think it is about the city that attracts people to move here?
It's a beautiful place. I think it's a magical place. A lot of people pass through here without an intention of staying and then get stuck. I include myself in that group, having passed through Austin in the late 70s. It's a beautiful place. It's a progressive city. It's a very welcoming city. It's a kind city. We used to be known as the friendly city. Now it's, the city, keep Austin weird. To me, what that means is that it's okay in the city to be different. It's okay to think outside the box. It's okay to try new and different things. I think that's associated with innovation. If people feel free to do that, then they're more likely to take risks. I think Austin has a high tolerance for risk taking. I think that encourages innovation. Many cities around the country and around the world, if you try something and you fail, you're punished. You never get a second shot. Not so much here. And I think that the whole tie to tech innovation, the reason we have more startups per capita here than anywhere else is because of that culture. It's okay to try things. If it doesn't work, you try to learn quickly and try again. And that creates not only the kind of community that is wonderful to live in, but a community that generates more than its fair share of innovation. That's why Austin, the 11th largest city in the country, but only the 4th largest city in Texas, representing about 5% or so of the state's population, is responsible for a third of the patents and half the venture capital in the state.
Yes, sir. Speaking of the tech industry in Austin, you've hosted at least one or more tech town halls at Capital Factory. Can you kind of talk about your experience doing that? What kind of things did you learn or hear from folks at those events?
I like that space. I like spaces in our town where innovators and makers and entrepreneurs all gather in kind of entrepreneurial ways. When I came into office, it was part of the brand that we were really trying to push. It was already growing organically. the concept of being known as kind of a social innovation capital of the world was something that was real appealing to me. So we really pushed the application of new technologies and new economies into solving social challenges as a key component of how we approach issues in this city.
And
Uh,
do you think the university kind of plays a role in having the talent pool here for companies and startups to kind of draw from?
I think the university plays a huge component in that. I recognize that employers and small companies and large companies want to come to Austin because of the workforce. And that workforce, a lot of it comes from the university. A lot of it comes from people who came for the university and then got a job in a company. There's a lot of cross mixing. I also recognize that the people that companies want to hire want to live in Austin in part because of Barton Springs. So it's a quality of life issue, which is why the positions that we take very progressively with respect to the environment and climate change are all part of that workforce development program.
Gotcha. So we're seeing, with the pandemic going on right now, a lot of companies are still having folks work from home, and that's giving people an opportunity to work remotely. And I've read stories about startup companies and entrepreneurs, during this time moving to cities like Austin, and kind of setting up shop here. Have you heard anything on that front?
Yes, we continue to see that. And we're still in talks with other companies that are looking at moving to the city. City has a lot to offer. There are two people that were residents of New York that have been living with me since March, and my son-in-law and daughter, both working remotely, but both now continuing to do that, but taking a look at this city. Um, this is a city that for so many of the people that live here becomes a easier place relatively to work during a pandemic than many other cities.
Gotcha. Stepping
Again,
back.
that's not everybody in this city, but it's a large component of it.
Sure. Stepping back a little bit to kind of the beginning of the pandemic, February, March of this year, very challenging time. Um, you put out an emergency declaration, and eventually the decision was made to cancel South by Southwest. In hindsight, that was a great decision. But can you talk a little bit about the kind of decision process on that on the declaration of emergency and on the cancellation of South by Southwest?
It was a horrible decision and painful decision. One of the hardest that I've been involved in. At the same time, there was no alternate choice that could really work. We were watching the pandemic as it moved across the world. I was regularly in touch with mayors across the world in some of the cities and countries that were being hit hard. It was real apparent how fast this was moving and how fast it expanded once in the country. And then it came and it hit California and hit Seattle. And you could immediately see that this was going to be happening to us too. So we were sensitized to the issue, watching the issue move. We were in conversations with South by for 2-3 weeks before the decision was made. But when we made the decision on March 6th, it was recognizing that South by was just about to start loading in. If we were going to make a call, better to make it before they load in than a week later, just after the load in, but before it opens. We were looking at a significant number of people that we would soon be welcoming to our city, thousands coming from Seattle, where it was unstable at that point, uncertain at that point. We were trying to figure out if we could really stop the people that were coming in from China and from Asia, and how that would impact the program itself to start losing communities. So it was really hard, and it was hard because I knew that as soon as I said out loud that South by wouldn't be happening, that I was devastating businesses and individuals. people that had spent the last year or more getting ready to launch something at South by. Businesses in this city that get most of their yearly net profit during this week, and recognizing that the people that was going to hit the hardest would be people that would have most difficulty in being able to recover, the barkeeps, the waitresses, the small music venues. That I knew it would be really hard. I knew there would be a huge price to pay, and that made the decision horrific. But in looking at the health evidence and talking to the scientists and the doctors, the decision we had to make was pretty clear.
Absolutely. That was an excellent decision to do that. And looking back at it in hindsight, can you kind of talk a little bit about your experience being the mayor of Austin during a pandemic? What kind of lessons have you learned? Maybe talk a little bit about your experience doing city council meetings remotely and having people attend that way.
Well, obviously, everybody's life has been disrupted because of the pandemic, and everybody's trying to figure out how best to do things, and everybody confronted with new things, new challenge without a playbook, trying to learn as fast as we can to try to make sure that we at least don't make the same mistakes twice, and that we build on the things that we happen to do that worked. I've gotten pretty good at Zoom and Teams and all of the different platforms that exist in this space. I still miss being around people in the same way, and the casual conversations associated with meetings aren't happening in the same way. You get on, you get off. I'm missing the travel time between meetings. That gave me a chance to think about the meeting I just left and to prepare for the meeting I'm about to get into. Now I have more days where I have, 5 to 10 meetings with 15-second breaks in between one meeting and the next meeting. So that's hard. I think overall in the pandemic, I'm just really proud of a community that's able to do what it takes to be able to keep itself safe. Back when we did the first lockdown of the city back in March, we were trying to figure out if we would be able to cut the infectivity of the virus to a number that was below 70, 75%. Obviously, the models we were looking at told us that we really needed to get to was above 90%, but no one thought we could actually do that. So we started planning our recovery based on assuming a 70% reduction. As it turns out, we were like 92, 94% is what the community achieved, which is why we were able to push the limit down. I also learned the importance of messaging from leaders. I think that one of the real lessons learned from this pandemic as people look back is going to be on the issue of masking. Putting on a mask, never has so little been requested of people to achieve so much.
Right.
Masking. When you're asked to put a piece of material in front of your face, it's nothing relative to the benefit, because nothing that we can do can have the same impact on being able to keep schools open and open businesses and keep the economy open as wearing a mask. But somehow or another, that has turned into a partisan political question. I firmly believe that if we had had really strict, quick messaging on that issue, if we had had the adoption rate that you see in Asian countries and in other countries around the world, we would have saved over 100,000 lives in this country. And the fact that we did not do that borders on being criminal, because it is such an easy thing to do, but it's hard now. So when the president came out and started discouraging people, sort of a quienes más machos, issue with respect to masking, that forced lots of places around the country to shut down their economies in ways that they wouldn't have had to do. Even in our state, we were lucky to have a governor that was willing to be photographed wearing a mask, and that saved lives. Him saying that it was important to wear a mask saved lives. The failure to actually mandate masking by our governor cost lives. His effort to stop us from being able to mandate masking in our city cost lives. Not only did it cost lives, but it also kept businesses closed longer and harder than they would have otherwise. So I learned a lot about the ability of government to set norms, to help use the bully pulpit in ways to bring a community together in kind of a self-help kind of way, and just the reaffirmation of knowing that people are responsible, and if you are open and transparent to a large degree, people will do what's necessary to protect themselves and their neighbors. But the message has to be clear. You know, the mandate for masking that comes from government isn't so much about actually having it mandated, because we can't enforce it when there's not enough police officers or code enforcement agents. But the fact of making it mandatory sends an unambiguous message as to its importance. I think that was an important lesson.
Understood. And how about in terms of people attending city council meetings? Is that increased dramatically now that it's virtual?
You know, Austin, by our nature and DNA, has more active public participation than most other cities in the country, and that has not stopped with Zoom meetings. I don't know that we have any more people speak, but I don't know that we have any less people speak. We're doing the meetings here, Zooming. We had already in our meetings created opportunities for people to be able to address the council remotely during citizens communication. We have now moved to letting people address the council remotely, obviously just on regular items on the agenda. That may be very well something that continues on in a post-COVID world. But it's hard to hold meetings where you're staring at a green dot on a screen, and it's hard to look at that green dot. If you look down on the screen to actually look at the pictures of people, then it looks like you're looking down for somebody that's watching the video. So there's a lot of art to go along with the science. I think that it does increase accessibility for people, and we need to maintain and expand that. We also have to make sure that there's enough time for council members to actually do the business of the council, and that's always our challenge. If we let everybody who wanted to speak at a council meeting speak for 3 minutes, we wouldn't have any council deliberation time in our meetings.
Right, right. That makes total sense. What are you hearing from the business community in terms of the challenges that they're facing right now during the pandemic? I know obviously restaurants and bars are feeling it with not having to be able to have the city open completely. But what other kind of challenges are you hearing from local businesses?
Well, I think that the most of what I'm hearing in terms of challenges are the issue of being able to open. You mentioned restaurants and bars now pretty much open. Most bars can qualify to open as a restaurant now that the governor's opened up that door. But movie theaters and places where people gather, other kinds of theaters. I'm hearing from those folks. And I'm also hearing from folks that are able to open but are not doing well because the public doesn't feel comfortable going back yet. Restaurants are able to open at 75%, but frankly, I don't know that I go eat inside a restaurant yet. I am going to restaurants. I'm sitting outside, especially those restaurants that are demonstrably doing a really good job of enforcing masking, keeping their customers safe. But I recognize they're hurting as I look inside. There's restaurants and there's just not the same clientele, number of people that are sitting inside. So there are those kinds of issues. It's a capital issue. I hear from landlords that aren't being paid rent by businesses that aren't earning money to be able to pay rent. We're hearing problems with workers. They get sick, and what do you do? There's certain protections provided by federal law, but it gets awkward and cumbersome as well. And then obviously anything like this is going to exacerbate the challenges we have with people that are experiencing homelessness, because we have more and more people that lose their housing and are put on the street. And that becomes then a challenge for the entire community. How do we help those folks without sending them into the woods just to hide from us? How do we actually provide housing, a place for those folks to be that is healthy and safe for them? We were moving forward with kind of a hotel strategy, buying up hotels to turn into permanent supportive housing. And now most of the hotels we were looking at are isolation facilities for COVID. So not so much focus now on ending homelessness as it is keeping the community safe. And there are a lot of cities around the country that have had outbreaks that have endangered the entire community, but outbreaks that started the communities experiencing homelessness. We have not had that in our city, in part because of the focus that we've had. But I hear those kinds of issues as well.
Absolutely. We had the director of your economic development division, Sylnovia Holt Rab, on the podcast, and she talked about the great resources that the city offers to local businesses and entrepreneurs, especially right now during the pandemic. Have you heard of? Have you been keeping up with like businesses taking advantage of those resources?
And they are, and it's important as we get money from the federal government. We're using that. We're also using some of our local tax dollars to help prop up and save people and businesses. Just last week, we approved yet another resolution that was focused on critical business infrastructure, $15 million, starting off $5 million to help preserve and help the childcare industry sustain. The fear is that if we lose some of the childcare facilities we have, they will never come back. The people that do them will leave, and it's such a touch and go business model to start off with. Also, $10 million for music venues and iconic businesses. Again, focusing on those businesses that if we lose them, probably will not come back. So maybe those places that are important to our brand in the city. But if we lost them after the pandemic, there's going to be no replacement with a similar kind of business because they're in a location where the economics don't work. I'm thinking areas like 9th and Red River, places like the Victory Grill on 11th and 12th. You can't go back into those places. Continental Club on Broken Spoke on South Lamar. So dollars that are going to be spent trying to help those businesses that are able to pull together a plan which would demonstrate that they have a long-term sustainability or survivability and associated with our civic infrastructure that we can help. And then I'm doing a lot of my time lobbying at the federal level with other mayors from across the country to get Congress to actually step up and do what we need them to do with respect to this next CARES funding or HEROES funding. We need that dollars coming back to us, and they need to come to the cities directly so that we can send out that money on the front lines to help the businesses and the individuals that are suffering most right now.
Very good, very good. I know we're close to the end of our time here. I know you got to jump on another meeting, but a few final questions for you. It was announced in the news that Tesla is going to be moving to Austin, and I know it's great for the city. Can you talk about the good things that are coming for our economy because of that move to Austin from Tesla?
Tesla's a great move. In this city for the last 3 or 4 years, I've been focused on trying to land clean manufacturing at scale in our city because it provides middle skill jobs. Real good living wages for people that don't have a 4-year college degree, but could get a certificate or a 2-year degree. That's what Tesla represents in that kind of manufacturing operation, to expand the manufacturing opportunities that exist in the city. The satellite companies that will come in to be near them, the Tesla manufacturing plant. So I'm excited, and the tie to taking a tech company like that at the intersection of tech and manufacturing, no better place for a company like that to be than in the Austin area, which is why I was excited when they came. Back in the height of the pandemic, The only exception I made to have somebody to meet with me in person was Elon Musk. But I figured that was really important to the community to make happen. So I'm excited that they're here, and I think that there are going to be more opportunities presented itself for us to be able to compete for those kinds of jobs, greater jobs.
Yes, sir. Looking forward to seeing how all that plays out. Left the hardest questions for last for you. The final two questions to wrap up. What is your favorite book and what is your favorite restaurant in Austin, Texas?
Those are really hard questions. Most of the books that I get a chance to read now are all about urban planning and city work, and I'm reading reports. So I'm looking forward to actually getting back to books that I would really enjoy when I leave. I think my favorite book at any point in time is the book that I'm reading right now. Just because the book I'm reading right now is a book about Secretary Baker, was Secretary of State for George Bush, written by Baker. It's either Paul Baker or Peter Baker. A great book. His son was my roommate in law school. So it's a great book to read on lots of levels. My favorite restaurant, an even harder choice, and one I have religiously never answered as mayor of this city because I'm the mayor of all of the restaurants. But Austin is lucky to have phenomenal restaurants, from white tablecloth restaurants all the way to some of the best food served at food trucks that you can get in any city in the world. This really is a wonderful and incredible restaurant town. It is a significant part of our brand.
Fair enough. Mayor Steve Adler, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Appreciate everything you're doing for our city, and hope to have you on another time.
Invite me back. I'd love to come back.
Thank you so much, sir. Take care.
Thank you.